Good day, everyone. Welcome to Sports CTO Talks. In this series, we will be connecting with technology leaders in sports industry, where we will simplify sports technology. I am Ami, your guide in this journey through the minds of tech leaders who are shaping the future of sports. We will dive deep into innovations driving the industry. If it is from AI to cloud, from cybersecurity to sustainability, if it is sports technology, we are talking about it. Today, we have with us Mr. Nigel Prasad. He is the COO of Talent Locker. He will discuss in detail about youth sports development and the future of technology. We welcome you, Nigel, to the podcast.
Thank you, Ami. Thank you for having me all the way in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. So I'm looking forward to this chat that we've got going. Thank you.
If you could just share, what does Talent Locker do? What is your role and, how it is benefiting the audience?
Yeah, no problems, no problems. So Talent Locker is a global sports development platform. So we focus heavily on the 98% of athletes in the grassroots and development section. Okay, so we help them find pathways, opportunities, and basically get some reach globally for their chosen sports. But we've also, as of recent, started our technology drive, and we are now bringing in a whole heap of technology that can suffice and help athletes measure, collect data, and basically with these metrics, they're able to share to clubs, to managers, to whoever, their basically journey through sport. So we're basically making the journey for an athlete more relevant than just playing the game. It's about collecting data, metrics, and measurements to then see how they're growing throughout their journey in sport.
Okay, that's interesting, and good to know new things also. So,
Absolutely.
my first question to you is, how are young athletes using the wearable technology? Because that is in right now. And, how does it help in tracking and improving their performance in sports?
Absolutely. So, look, the wearables have been around for the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years. They've made a mark, a big mark. From my professional or ex-professional background, we used to be GPS tracked when I used to play. So I come from the sport of rugby league. I was brought up in Australia, and that was my chosen sport, and I ended up playing professionally. So with the back of that, we used to have a lot of GPS trackers that were attached to us that would pick up our kilometers per game, our heart rate, and basically that what I just touched on in terms of data capture, that was sort of an old school way of capturing a section of data that could then be passed down to strength and conditioning trainers, then to basically pre or program a better training session or a better recovery module. So what we're able to do now, what's available for athletes that you can buy off the shelf, you've got some of the big brands like Garmin, Suunto, Whoop, the Oura Ring. All of these do very basic metrics that keep athletes accountable or keep anyone accountable. Obviously, my background in Dubai for the last 20 years has been in the fitness and health industry. I've owned multiple gyms and still have places here that people do use on a daily basis. But how we saw the wearable market integrate with that industry was it kept people accountable. So with tracking sleep, now they're able to track stress monitors, blood sugar. So it's good. They need to understand what that data is telling them rather than just having the, flashy dashboard. It's good to sort of understand what those metrics are telling you. So I think for young athletes, it's a good way, as I said, to keep them accountable throughout training, what they're eating, what they're putting in their body. So look, again, we're going into a new age of where data is gold. And I think if you can learn to sort of use it for the positive, and why I say that, because I do have a whole heap of my clients who are sort of my age or a little bit older. I'm 40 years old this year. But the thing you don't want to do is become obsessed about metrics and data. And I see a lot of that happening too, where it becomes down to how many calories I burnt or how hard I pushed a workout. I think for the best part of it is that if you can have consistency and that discipline to get up every day or do some sort of movement that benefits you, but not to become obsessed about numbers, because again, these are very, the metrics we see on our phones, our smartphones, are played within a range of, 1 to 200. So it's not accurate, but it's near enough. So that's what I've sort of got to say. But it is a positive thing for all sports and the health industry as well.
Okay, and that's interesting to know also. So what is the role of mobile apps specifically and the online platforms, what are there right now, in helping the young athletes connect with the coaches and the mentors? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. So Talent Locker was developed for just that. We started off with the mindset of being like a LinkedIn of sport, where athletes could go onto this platform, create a profile, then start connecting with clubs, managers, agents, and start to take their careers in their own hands. Because look, it's less than 2% that actually go pro in any sport. And if you don't have the means or the pathways to get into these, some of the top schools or universities, you may not ever be found. Now, we developed a platform that gives everybody a chance to then connect. I feel like with this day and age, with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, these young kids are living on their phones and smart devices. So they're consistently connecting or being, having something shoved in their face that they need to sort of look at. So how and why we sort of jumped on the back of that was that, okay, teaching these young youth ages to connect on that level. It's not just about putting fancy videos up or, a TikTok dance. It's using this profile to benefit what comes forward or what comes next in your career. So that was where we started with. And then as, R&D became every year and every month past that, the tech development started to really come our way. So at this stage in phase 2 with Talent Locker, they're able to create their profile, they're able to connect, they're able to be then analyzed via a smartphone or tablet device in the sport they're playing. So our AI technology that's plugged in is able to basically capture what they're doing in their sport, whether it be 5 simple tests or, 3 different movements, and basically analyze, capture, and give them the response of how they can better that series of movements and what they can do then to get a better time or a better score. And they can then be rated throughout the app, or globally, they can be rated to where other kids are sitting. So it gives them a good platform to see, you might think you're good in your, area or country or suburb or town, but once you start to see the data and you see, okay, over in, let's say, India, there's a couple of kids that are really outstanding and in that bracket, and you get to see why, because then you can go to their profile and see the training they're doing or what the differences are. So I think it gives a good comparison. What we're striving and hoping to do in the next, year to 18 months is really start working with the federations to sort of help mandate governments and schools where there is a benchmark standard to help, programs like an Olympic program have a standard where kids are already coming in with a 60% sort of protocol, and then they are into the system. And then from there, they become, world-class athletes, or even if they don't, they've gone through the system, right? So it's not promised, but it gives a benchmark to work towards.
True. And it is going to benefit the athletes in the long run also, I feel, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, again, I think coming from, first of all, a professional sports background myself, but then into a coaching role for the last 20 years, I've seen how I've had to be visual. Like it's what I see first. That's how I base the metrics of my programming. If you're getting better, I can usually see it. But then, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm, the best judge of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, right? So if I've got data being pushed into my smart tablet or phone daily on what Ami's doing every day, consistency, then I'm able to see the true metrics and see if my programming is really working or I have to tweak my programming so you can become that better person, then athlete, etc.
True. I so agree with that. So, like, this is the age of, AI and VR, and everyone is, exploring it. People are evolving in the technology domain also. So, I just wanted to understand, how can virtual reality basically be used to train the youth in any sport? It can be cricket, football, basketball, any sport. How can it
Yeah.
help? And it can grow also over the period of time.
Look, I think in a nutshell, basically, it allows now any child in the world to be coached not just by the said professional. Let's use one of our ambassadors, Brett Lee. Okay, if we're going to talk cricket, I think it's relative and relevant for the Indian market, right? He's a huge superstar, global cricket, and I know that from living in the UAE, speaking to a lot of the Asian market, that is the sport of choice. But also, whenever I tell people I'm from Australia, they're like, Brett Lee, and they start going through the cricket team, Ricky Ponting, this, and I love it. It's awesome. But I also see that kind of person was so out of reach for these people. And just like yourself, I see it on the weekend here. There's car parks out here that are full with cricketers, and they're playing for the love of the game. But to be honest, I've stopped a few times to watch, and there is some talent there. But unfortunately, just the way it is that they may never get to use that talent, bar the love of the game, right? Which is sad, but it's a reality too, because of social structures, money, etc. So I understand that. But what VR, AI, all of these new technology hubs give is Brett Lee can sit in Australia and compute the algorithm, give out programmings that anybody in the world then can be just like Brett Lee as he grew up from a development stage all the way to a professional. You want to develop your own skills, but that gives you a template, right? So, I think that is the biggest win. I saw the GMR group that is obviously big. I have a close connection with Kiran, and I've made a friendship from living here in Dubai. They obviously own Delhi Capital, and then Dubai Capitals and a whole list of other teams. But I just recently saw last week on LinkedIn that they are now using high-profile cricketers and using the whole technology where they basically trademark their profile, and through AI, they're able to basically mimic anything that, let's say I said Brett Lee is running an ad for a car or for GMR Group or whatever. Sounds like him, looks like him, but isn't him in reality. But I mean, as scary as that is that's where we're at now. So athletes can also, trademark themselves, make a lot of money on the back of that after their careers, during their careers, and not only be in their said country, but be global now without even traveling, anything like that. So I think, look, it's moving a lot faster than I guess we can catch up right now. So it's a good thing, but I think we've just got to do it in phases. And that's one thing with talent, like as much as you get excited about the new technology idea that's around the corner, I think it's right to do it in phases and not push it all at once onto people, because otherwise you just become a big menu of too many things and people that don't understand, right? So as I said, like I think I've turned 40 and I'm only getting my head around some of this stuff now. And, again, I'll be honest with you, I came from a background of sports. I played sports. I coached sports. But in terms of data and collecting and what's happening now with tech, I'm only learning this now, right? So to say that we have a sports tech company is exciting, but we also have to keep up to date with what's happening and what's around the corner. So I think the slower we move and give the basics out so people understand is the best thing. And then, all of these advancements will be there. And that's the future.
That is true. Like, you have to move slowly, but if you're evolving, if you're growing as a company, also it's going to make a difference. It's going to help the
Absolutely.
athletes. Absolutely. I agree. So, like, can you share a few examples specific to AI? Are there any AI powered tools which are helping young athletes to measure their strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah. So obviously the developments that we have and what we've got currently in our systems is our AI cameras. So our AI cameras are probably this big. They sit on the side of the pitch. And basically whatever, give you an example, we're working with some of the big schools here in the UAE. Whatever the schools want to capture in terms of data and metrics, it could be a 20-meter shuttle. It could be how long can they stand on their left leg to right leg, very simple metrics. Or we can go global standards. What's happening across the globe, we fit them into the school. But most schools are choosing to start at the very, very bottom just so they can start with the key stage learning age, which is, 5 to 7, pick up those data and those metrics and then go into sort of mid-level school and then to high school seniors. Why this is important, I guess with a country like the UAE, unfortunately, kids don't sort of develop with motor skills or development like the rest of the world, okay? They don't get to do the simple things like go and kick the ball in the park or ride their bike because of the way the city's structured, right? It's a very busy city, and people majority live in apartment buildings. So we're seeing this whole, especially after COVID, this whole group or age group generation, I would say, is getting a little bit slower to develop. So why this technology helps even before they go and play sport is we're seeing how they can quicker develop, do the right things in like a PE class where they're being taught, a curriculum that is able to strengthen them from that age. And then once they get to mid-level where they're playing competitive sport or starting to play sport, at least they're catching up to their predecessors in maybe India or Australia, or England, wherever we're talking, where, basic motor skills are given every day or, catch pass type scenario. So, yeah, that's where the technology really starts to help. It's not just for athletes. It's starting key stage learning age all the way to them when they start playing sport. Back to your original question, how does it help athletes? It helps athletes become more accountable in what they're doing to get to the pro level. Like myself, I trained with a team. I trained with the club. I had my S&C trainers and coaches. Now, a lot of that coaching element was done through a textbook, experience from our coaches, what worked, what didn't. But that was their opinion, right? That was based on an opinion. This is what I'm going to give this team because that's what I think that works, right? Now, I can have the opinion of 700 coaches, right, pushed into our AI algorithms and given specifically for what works for this child or this young athlete. And I think in terms of benefit-wise, I mean, it's working with 700 coaches globally and getting that final result in programming that they understand and that works for them specifically. So it's more of a tailored approach. I always use this analogy when I'm in meetings is that we look at China and what they have done in sports. Some people don't like it. Some people think it's amazing. Now, I sort of sit on the fence, but I also see the discipline that China gives to young athletes. Is it maybe a bit too much at the ages of, 5 to 7 where they're in junior athletic camps or gymnastic camps and the way you see the training being drilled, yeah, maybe not, but that's what happens in China, right? Who are we to say yes or no? But what I take from this is that they were trying to build the perfect athlete from early stage learning to by the time they get to Olympics, which would be 16, 17. And that's when we see the last 6 years, 7 years that China dominate the medal tally because of the discipline, because of that early stage learning. And they did it. They built, I mean, excuse the pun, but they built soldiers to go into the Olympics, right? Discipline, and they were like robots. They couldn't fault, right? So that's why I'm saying it's all driven on data. It's all driven on metrics and measurements. And they were the first ones to sort of get that and plug that in. And the rest of us were like, oh, it's too much. These kids shouldn't be pushing that hard at that age. But I mean, if kids want to go professional, they have to have that mindset of a professional athlete. By the time they're 12 or 13, that's the age where we start to scout. And that's the age they should be an assistant. Anything past that might be too late.
Correct. Like as you were talking about schools, and from a young age, kids have to be involved. So how can technology be integrated into the, sports curriculum? Because you are closely working with the school systems. So I just wanted to understand on that, how is it more engaging for the students?
Yeah, look, I think from the schools to students, I think the schools look at it in a way how they can be out the front first, right? Schools want to develop with technology. Not many schools I know here that even use pen and paper anymore. It's all done on a laptop or an iPad, right? So the development is there. So when it comes to what can schools get from this is that they're developing as technology develops. They're keeping up. And then it's passed down to their students, whether you like it or not. I don't have kids at the moment, but I do have a lot of friends who have kids. The consistent churn of, I don't like my child on the iPad, they're spending too much time on the iPad, may be true. I get it. And this is a thing where if it's, spending time on the iPad because they're on YouTube or playing games versus being outside playing sport and having the balance, totally understand. But unfortunately, there's one thing we cannot fight, and this is coming from someone with an older head. I'd rather be outside than inside. Is we cannot fight the technology drive. It's there, but it's how we adapt and let these young kids learn about what they're taking in. Now, that's something that's probably not in my realm, and this is why we're pushing education pieces out onto Talent Locker's platform to say, if you're a young athlete, use technology to your advancements and make it work for you. And this is why we have the AI analyzers to basically analyze bodies, keep their structure, training, give them programs. But from a school level, this kind of technology available to them also helps them level up their teaching, their education pathways, and the curriculums can change. I said this last night. I said, why are we still learning algebra in maths? Why are they still teaching it? And I was watching something on Netflix and they said, as soon as you leave school, that's the last time you ever see algebra or hear of algebra, right? Like from what I know, for the common person, right? So again, with things like this that we're teaching that was given in the 70s, 80s, that still exists with no sort of, I don't know, ethical reason behind it, doesn't make sense. Why aren't we teaching kids about how to how to learn about money, how to, finance, spend stuff? Like this is the important kind of stuff that we should have got at school, and we didn't. But then again, hopefully that schools can start to change the way curriculums look, especially when it comes to technology coming in, with the information coming in.
Okay. So, like, as you was like, we were discussing on this, a continuing question is the social media helping or motivating the youth to pursue sports these days? And like, if yes or no, like how it is working?
Yeah, look, I think of course, social media, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is. They're getting to see the real sense of what their idols, like a Cristiano Ronaldo, for instance, right? The number one sort of profile in the world, doesn't matter whether it becomes sport or just, as a human, he's the number one followed person on Instagram. So with Cristiano releasing his YouTube, you get to see what Cristiano is really like, not just the superstar on the field, but you get to see time with his family. You get to see the balance that he has to have as a professional athlete at 40, the training, the food, and then all his commitments of his day job. Okay. So it gives the reality of I want to be a professional athlete. Yes. Okay. That's one part of that whole job. But then you have to have media commitments. You have to learn how to speak to the media. You have to learn how to present yourself in a reasonable way. You need to now adapt all of these things, because just like we were working last week with the ICC cricket here for the the Dubai TLT20. And so this is where all the franchise teams are playing here in Dubai. And the big thing we had during that interview was, how can young athletes market themselves better to stand out? And I said, that's a good question, because this is something you can't just rely on your skill in the gym or on the pitch. Okay, you're good at what you do, but as a franchise or as a club, can I then market this young athlete? Because I also need the return. If I'm going to spend on this young athlete, I need a return coming from somewhere. Even if they're not in the system for the next 2 to 3 years or playing professionally, it's still money we're spending on someone. So that's the big thing. And I feel like with TikTok, it sort of became this place where they could express themselves. The young generation, they sort of need to tailor that, bring it into the sports realm and do the same. Because I see young kids from 16, 17 being able to get brand deals part-time if they are marketable. And you very rarely see it unless someone like Red Bull or one of the big brands have taken some of these young athletes, but they usually take them at the top of their game, right? But I think as a company, I would rather, with Talent Locker's vision, I would rather market a young 15, 16, 17-year-old at the top of their game who speaks well, who's respectable, who can, present themselves in front of the camera and be that, person that you think, okay, in 5 years, this kid is going to be something special, right? And this is why I think tennis done a great job with their athletes in general. Like if you made it onto the circuit at a young age, which most of them do, they're media trained very well. They step in front of the camera. They know how to sort of deliver the answers when given to them. So I think it's very important. That's why we hold tennis at such a high standard, a prestigious sport, because it's the representation of these athletes, the way they come across. And I think everyone should learn from that, because it's very marketable. Roger Federer showed us from a young age, he could not do anything wrong. Even if he wasn't, winning, which is very rare, he was the most marketable athlete in the world because of his personality. And again, it's all about how your personality is, right? So yeah, to your question, I think, with the advancements of, social media, this is what these kids have got to learn. You can't just be a good looking kid and that's it, right? Like you've got to have everything else with it.
True. I so agree. So what are the challenges these days the young athletes are facing when it comes to technology, into the specific sports training programs? So what are the challenges they are facing, or organizations or schools or academies are facing?
Look, I think it's going to be a very short answer. It's patience. They don't have patience, right? Adults don't have patience. And back to your previous subject is that we're all now programmed to have a 15-second lifespan on anything that we're sort of concentrating on, right? So when I'm giving a young athlete a 6-week program, they're looking at me and saying, Coach, I know all this stuff. I'm like, it's not about knowing all this stuff. It's about having the repetition to do all this stuff on a daily basis. And, I know adults think this is that if we're talking weight loss or anything like that in that regime, it's going to take 6 to 9 months to see any sort of difference in your body. This is from a general population trying to lose weight, correct? 6 to 9 months of discipline, having a diet that's around 60, 70%, good, and being active. And they all turn around and say, oh, can't I get it done in like 60 days? Like, no, like it's not. Everything we're being fed on social media is all marketing. Companies do very well. Yeah, lose weight in 60 days. They don't tell you how much. They don't tell you the rebound effect. They just say lose weight in 60 days, right? So, or your money back. So the disclaimer there, or your money back. They haven't told you how much weight. You could lose a kilo, 5 kilos. You probably will. So their job is done. So I think with that kind of marketing out there, everything's fast results. Athletes now in the youth generation, it's hard to see if their work ethic is there. If they don't want to do it long-term, don't have a long-term view and only have a short-term view, it's hard to say. I met a girl yesterday at the netball showcase that we did for Cognita Schools. She's now 19 years old, going back to Australia to start university. But she's had a long-term view on playing professional netball. So she's getting the pathway to go back, and she will start with a semi-professional team once she gets back to Brisbane. So you do find them. She's still got the want to play professionally, but she knows she's got to balance it with the university. They're there, but they're there in less quantities now, these kids, than before, because they also know that through technology, if it's too hard, maybe like physical sports not my thing, I might go to the eSport type of arena. They earn money straight away if they're good at it, and it's a hard one, man. I understand, because as a youth athlete, you might not see money for the next 8 to 10 years. Who knows, right? So, but you got to have the passion and the why and want to do it. So I understand, but yeah, it's a tough one with the advancements. That's probably the biggest challenge, if they want to stick to something or not, basically.
Okay. So like, as these are the challenges right now, slowly and gradually, gamification also has increased. So
Correct.
what is the participation, the youth participation? Like, if you could club physical activities, gamifications, the apps. So like, is the youth interested into that right now? And how is it shaping up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, with gamification up there now, look what Saudi's doing. Saudi's doing the world esport events, and it's like the Olympics. So a lot of these, young kids who are playing sport, they also, that's their time away. They go and game for 3 to 4 hours a day. And again, for someone like me, I'm like, that's crazy that they're sitting there, but it is what it is, right? So I think you do see a big sort of one foot in type mentality, because it goes back to my previous answer, is that they see that this could be a long journey for physical sport. But when it comes to earning money, they can earn money straight away, or basically within the next 6 months, by e-gaming. So yeah, look, who are we to judge that? Again, I think it's coming with the times, and if it's available to them, who knows? If when we were young, if this was available to us, we probably would have gone that way as well, right? Like, everyone wants to be a superstar at something. This gives them access to become, a superstar overnight without the hard work, if that makes sense.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so like, as we were discussing gamification, this is a completely different question I'm interested to ask in. Like, right now there are Paralympics happening, and people are getting involved, people are understanding, people are getting sensitized towards it. So is there any tech playing a role? Are there any innovations from the tech angle for Paralympics or the specially abled people around us? And how is it
Absolutely.
working?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, funnily enough, after we finish up here, I have one of the Australian gliders, which is the Australian Paralympic basketball team. So she's over here in the UAE. I have a foundation that I'm a part of called the Heroes of Hope. So we've been running for the last 7 years. We have more than 350 youth athletes who are all POD, people of determination. And we basically get them active and into the community by doing sport. So we have partners all across the UAE that help us, whether it's paddle, weightlifting, rugby, any sport, you name it. They give up their time and they run courses that run 7 days a week for these kids who are, interested in all of these sports. So to the tech play, yes, there are a lot of tech companies now focusing on how adaptive movement, especially from the POD community, can then be studied and sort of streamlined into a talent ID program. Not every youth athlete in the POD program may fit, tennis or basketball or whatever is available to them. And just like I've learned this week, that the wheelchair accessibility and the wheelchair sports are getting so much bigger than previous years, right? Again, this might be something that I only learned this 2 days ago because Sarah was here. But to play wheelchair sports doesn't mean you have to be in terms of a wheelchair bound. So you can have a disability, whether it be, cognitive or, physical, but not necessarily meaning your legs don't work, that you have to sit in a chair. So that was interesting to me, because why this sort of became or made more sense, it communitized the whole thing. Just because, you might have someone who's an amputee and got one arm, right? That doesn't mean that can't sit in a wheelchair and play a wheelchair sport like rugby, basketball, tennis, whatever it is. So I thought that was a really cool thing that sort of the wheelchair community is doing, is bringing an adaptive sport that everyone, me and you, can sit in the wheelchair and play as well. So I think things like that are really cool, because it starts to give this immersive experience that everyone can be, joining everybody. So tech is playing a big part of that as well. As I said, they're analyzing movements. They're giving more of a talent ID program. Maybe, she or he wasn't the best fit for the sport that they're playing, but because of the certain movements and capabilities they have, they could try this sport. So yeah, for that whole Paralympic movement, this is what they're doing. But I think more funding, obviously, by governments needs to happen to support the whole Paralympic movement as well. Because again, something I've learned this week having Sarah here was that funding is tough, really tough. They represent Australia in the basketball. They wear the flag proudly, but yet they have to rely on sponsors to pay for wheelchairs and whatnot. So it's tough, but I guess, like you said, I think the more people that speak about it and have that adaptive quality and the community starts to become one, then, hopefully within the next couple of years, funding becomes accessible to them.
This is really interesting, and even I came to know it today, like when you shared it. It's completely new information. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So we can wind up. The last question is, are there any few, like 3-4 tips which you would like to share, to keep for the youth specifically, to keep in mind how the sports technology domain is growing and how they have to evolve as a person from a young age?
Yeah. Look, I think education pieces need to be definitely key here. So what I don't see much of, I see a lot of tips and tricks on how to become an athlete, and a lot of coaches are putting some good narratives and pieces together, but I don't think anybody from the tech side, apart from, like, I keep an eye on it, obviously, but that's something that Talent Locker is doing a lot more of, is on how athletes can use tech to further their careers or further their journey in sport. And I think first and foremost, if kids or youth start to see that part, then they will understand it, because a lot of them don't bother to want to understand it. I know there's one big problem we have at the moment, and we're trying to sort of streamline this, is that when we're at a festival and, you know, we've got our download now, you've got the QR codes, they download the app. That's one thing. But then where they get stuck, or where we see them drop off, is when they have to have detail put in, right? So, you know, put in your name, put in your age, your sport, and then as normal, like LinkedIn would ask you what occupation, blah, blah, blah. That's it. You've lost them. So we're figuring out a few ways how we can use the social strategies to inbuild to talent locker to get them signed on straight away, and then to see the benefit. Like I said, it comes back to this whole mentality of, if I don't see it now, I don't want it. If I order off Amazon, I want it like within the day, right? That's the mentality. So I think we're never going to win against that. It's about how we educate them, right? Take a bit of time, take the 5 to 10 minutes to fill it out, because after you've filled that out, then you're able to put your videos, you're able to connect. And the other thing too, I guess, through education, the youth need to learn possibly how to communicate better, because that's one thing I think that's lost, the art of communication amongst the new generation. Maybe we blame COVID, maybe we don't, but I think they just don't know how to sell or speak about themselves anymore. So, you know, that's one thing that they, I think, need to grasp, and then technology advancements can happen. Because the scary thing is, I mean, that, you know, with AI, you see it a lot. You see the stories. A lot of these kids are turning to AI as a companion and things like that. So, you know, again, it's very hard. Well, me or you will never change that, I don't think, but it's about how we can educate towards that, how they can use AI technology in the right ways, and, you know, hopefully there's some change in the future. So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Nigel, for sharing wonderful insights and especially joining, because it is like you are really busy and you could remove time. So it really means a lot to us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And like, as I said, like, if anything we do in the sports realm, you know, it's not to change the realm of sports, but it's to give adaptive and add easier ways to make these careers a little bit more viable for athletes, and, you know, obtainable, if that makes sense. So that's what we're here to do.
Perfect. So everyone, thank you for like listening. Let's stay connected, and for more updates and for more insights on sports technology, please share and like the button. Once again, thank you, Nigel, for sharing your experience, and it was really wonderful. Thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next time in the next episode. Bye. Thank you.